Hello folks, in the last video we got this thing to the point that you see it in right now, which is basically we got the bevel in on this knife, and we got a little bit of surface grinding done, pretty much all I wanted to do, and the profile and everything. So right now I'm going to be I'm going to be using some steel wool on this thing to hopefully get down into some of these deep pitting from the rust and get it out, so it's a little bit, it looks less brown. We also have this, which is not steel wool. It's like stainless steel, and it's much coarser. So it's kind of like steel wool, I guess. I don't know if it'll do a better job. What would really be good for this is a wire wheel, but I don't have one, which is unfortunately the case with a lot of things. This stuff can remove surface rust pretty easily, especially if it's on a higher polished area. Super rough, like this thing, maybe not so much. No, it does good. So yeah, I'm using steel wool, of course, and also some WD-40 to help penetrate and get the... Oh yeah, dude, look at that. That's nasty. Wipe off the rust and then keep going. It's not sharpened, so don't worry, I'm not going to cut myself even though I'm handling it like this. Alright, so I came back with some supplies. This is just trash bag. Some supplies that will hopefully help us to get more rust off and also clean it up some. So we have this stuff. It's for like cleaning stoves and pans and metal and hardware, and I don't know. It sounds like it could work. You mix it with a little bit of water and on the surface, and it makes like a paste that's abrasive. We have, of course, a toothbrush and another brush to help scrub. And then we have this soap, which removes grease and also is very abrasive. So we'll use that as a finishing thing to really strip everything off of that. Oh goodness. Sounds like brushing teeth, except I don't think you'd want to eat this stuff or put it in your mouth. Big brush. I just took it all off. Alright. Now we'll use some of this stuff. This looks disgusting, but it's good for getting your hands clean. So, I mean, this thing is pretty clean now. Alright, and now I'm going to be continuing on this bevel. So I was calling this the primary bevel, but I don't know if I'm going to actually put it in a distinct secondary bevel. What I'm going to use is this slightly finer wheel and at a touch more angle. So it's, instead of being as shallow of an angle, it's going to come in a little bit like this. Not that dramatic, but, and then we'll basically be grinding this edge of it and hopefully getting this thing down to an actual sharp edge. And then I might try to blend it with this main bevel so it's just one continuous thing. Alright, so you can see I ground it back to about half of the first part of the bevel I did. The tip got a little bit burnt. I think I slightly got a little too hot. And since this is soft steel, it's not at all hardened or anything, it's gonna not be a very good knife. It's gonna deform pretty easily. And I don't really have a way of heat treating it or tempering it or anything. But I'm gonna try to, we're almost at a sharp edge. There's like 1 millimeter of flat part on top left. Alright, I think that's good. That's that right there. I mean, that's an edge. That is an edge. You can cut with this. It's not sharp very much. Otherwise I'd be cutting myself already. That just feels wrong to do though. But it's got an edge now. So I mean, see, I shaved off some of the wood. Probably already rolled the edge. I'm going to try to smooth out this bevel some to make it a little bit more continuous, because right now there's, just from that short time of using the quenching water, it already got kind of little tiny bit of surface rust on it. And try to blend these bevels together a little bit. So I don't know what grit to use. I'll start with 80, I guess. I think it's starting to work. It's going to take a long time. But it's starting to work. I'll get back to you when I'm done with this process. Alright, well, I think I'm done. So if you turn at an angle, you can see there's some of the grinder wheel marks left. But this side, I don't know which one's better, but you can see it looks shiny. Like, this is only 220 grit. I'm not joking. That's literally all I sanded it with. I used 80 grit before this, but and boy oh boy, it's shiny already. Looks sick, and it is sharp now. It's not super sharp, but you know, it'll cut stuff. Like, it's not going to slice cleanly, but you can see it cuts and it rips. What about some of this wood? And this is a bad angle, never mind. Speaking of wood, now I would like to find some material, some wood to make the handle out of, because this will be a full tang knife, so the handle will be entirely, the wood will be entirely on top of this piece of metal, so it'll be the same shape as this, just sticking out a little farther. Since this is so thick, like, it's so crazy thick that I only need just a little bit wider with wood, and then it'll already be a good handle shape and size. But I don't know if I have any good wood for this. But yeah, I'll see if I can find some. Alright, so I think what I'm going to do is make the handle out of this plywood. And the reason I'm picking plywood is because it's cheap, we already have it, and I think that this kind of laminated look could look cool when it's all sanded and like polyurethaned and everything. It could go well with the kind of DIY knife build theme. But yeah, so I don't know, this is probably like, what, 1 inch? 3/4. So I'm gonna need to cut this in half, like the thickness of it, reduce it to about half its thickness, because this is way too fat for one side of the handle. But yeah, that's the plan. So first I'm going to cut out the rough shape on here. Alright. Yeah, before this miter saw was not, it was always getting clogged right in here. You can see down through there, through the blade, there used to be a little piece of metal that would cut across here, and what it did, it served no purpose other than to clog everything up. So I just broke it out with a pair of pliers, and now it doesn't clog anymore, and it collects much more of the, obviously it doesn't collect a ton of it, but whatever goes down that hole ends up in the bag here. So I mean, that's somewhat useful. Alright, so I got the pieces cut in half, so I just used a little hacksaw to cut right through the middle of them as straight as I could. And since this surface that I cut isn't quite perfect, I'm not going to be using that to put on the tang of the knife. Instead, I'm going to be using this black surface, which is just paint on there, but this is much smoother, or much flatter, and I'm going to be grinding it more so with this grinder, because I need it to be perfectly level, no undulations, the edges need to be square, so this should hopefully leave it that way without causing too many issues. It's not a great tool for this. A belt sander would be better. Alright, now I'm just going to be using 80 grit to get these surfaces kind of roughed up. Excellent. So now I'm going to be roughing up this surface as well with 80 grit. So now we're going to really do some damage. Oh, what a shame. The beautiful handle. Not again. Oh. So you're probably wondering why I did that to this blade I worked so hard on, or to this handle. That's just so the epoxy will have something to bite onto. That's what that's doing. Alright. So, to start off with, I'm gonna make sure that this knife, the handle, is good and clean. because we don't want any oils or contaminants or rust that would potentially get in the way of this epoxy sticking. But speaking of rust, that's actually going to help this thing stick even better, because there's so many pits. The epoxy's going to grip really well probably, which is a good thing. That's the only good thing about rust when it comes to knife building. Okay, so we have our 2 wooden pieces, which actually, you know what? I'll be right back. Alright, I used the I used the grinder to just mess up the surface a little bit. It's still flat, but it has these grooves and cut marks in it. More grippage. I might be going overboard, but it's fine. This should work just real good. Alright, so we have this very dusty old thingy, this epoxy bottles. I'm going to try to get equal parts. That was probably way too much. This is not a super good container, it's all broken, but this will work. Alright, I think that's about as mixed as it needs to be. So now comes the slightly tricky part, and that is we need to, well, epoxy it up. I probably have about 10 to 15 minutes to work with here, which is plenty. But I can already tell it's starting to thicken just a little bit. I don't want to go too tight, but just a little bit is good. Clean up this excess, especially off of like the blade and stuff. Alright, so this has been curing for about 24 hours, and I did bring it inside in the night so it was able to cure in the house, so it wasn't as cold. And I think it's definitely hard enough to start working with. And so when I put these on, I didn't get them quite even. You can see this one on the right here is a little bit higher than that one. So I'm going to cut a little bit off of this and try to get it even. And then I'm going to taper these, and then of course do all the sanding to get this level with this tang, I think that's what it's called, all the way around, and of course round everything off. So yeah, hopefully this tool will be able to do it. Okay, so I should have done this from the beginning, but I have the blade wrapped up so it hopefully won't get damaged from the sanding and everything. Alright, let's continue on. Check this out. This thing looks great. It does have this hole that goes all the way through to the other side. It's just a hole in the plywood. But other than that, I mean, I have this even. I have it all rounded pretty much. And it feels great in the hand. And it really does. So now I'm going to move on to 220 and really bring this thing to a finished appearance. Brand new 220 grit. Look at that. Looks beautiful. It has this kind of circular, all crazy pattern from the from the orbital disc sander. So now I'm just going to go over it with this, going in a straight line to kind of bring it back to the straighter look. Doesn't take very long. That's me being poked with that. Because the sandpaper has holes in it, when I went over the edge, the point came right through one of those holes and got me. It didn't go deep though, so no bleeding, but still, that hurts. Alright, well, I'm gonna touch up the edge on there, the blade, and then hopefully we'll be able to put some coating on that wood. Alright, so it's been a day and we got it's time to oil this thing. So I'm gonna go with that instead of like a polyurethane or something on the handle, because it'll make it potentially less slippery, but it'll still resist water and stuff. It'll it'll penetrate into the wood some, and it'll prevent water from getting inside of it if it happens to get wet, and it'll prevent the metal from rusting as well, because this metal is incredibly prone to rusting. So this is just mineral oil. It says it's like food grade for laxative or something. I don't know why on earth you would drink this. I mean, tastes like absolutely nothing. It does say it tastes like nothing. So I mean, taste test confirms. Alright, but seriously, let's put this on the knife now. So I'm guessing we can just get a little bit on. Uh-oh, I'm making a mess. I got a lot bit on there. That's fine. That's what I'm doing, it's on here. So we really want to get it coated all on there. And all the cracks and crevices. Get it on the blade. I'm just gonna keep rubbing into this handle a little bit so it can absorb as much of it as possible. Oh yeah, there was a little hole that went from this side all the way to this side, and I used some homemade wood filler to fill it. I didn't film that, but I just took wood glue and mixed it with some sawdust and packed it into that hole and then sanded it down once it was dry. And yeah, it doesn't match perfectly, but I think it looks pretty good. Alright, I'm gonna let that sit for a few minutes. Alright, it's been a few minutes, so now we should be able to wipe off the excess, especially from the blade, and then of course the handle as well. Oops. Alright, well, I think we are done. Look at this. It's great. I mean, it still has this little bits, this rust in here, but that's pretty much permanent damage. There's nothing I can do about that unless I ground off like an 1/8 inch or like 3 millimeter, because some of those pits go that deep. But I'm very happy with the result. You can see even the plywood has some very nice wood grain to it, and I like the darker and lighter tones. It is somewhat sharp. It's not super sharp because it's so thick, but that was bad. I don't know if I can actually get it to cut this. There we go. Ignore that. So it's not super good on paper. But you can see it is definitely sharp. You could do some potentially pretty good feather sticking with this. Maybe if I sharpened it a little bit more, because it is, I guess you would call it like a Scandinavian grind. It does not have any secondary bevel. It's all just one bevel, as you can see. So it's good for doing that. So yeah, this thing is done. Remember, it used to look like this. Now it looks like this. I'm very pleased with the results, and this was a very nice transformation. Thank you for watching. I sure hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.